Picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast desert. The sun hangs low. Golden light spills across endless sand. Somewhere beneath your feet lie the broken walls of a city older than memory. Long ago, before pyramids rose and before kings wore crowns of gold, there was Akkad, a place of whispers, a place of power, streets filled with merchants, temples touched by starlight. But one day, the winds changed, the people vanished, the gods turned away. Now only silence remains. Tonight, we walk together through those quiet ruins. We trace the footsteps of forgotten kings. We listen to stories carved in clay. Let your mind drift, let your breath slow. Close your eyes if you wish. We have all night to wander these sacred, haunted grounds. The past is patient. It waits for us in the sand. The desert remembers everything. Wind shapes the dunes. Rain falls once in 100 years. But beneath the surface, something waits. Akkad sleeps under layers of time. Each grain of sand is a year. Each stone is a story. When the first light of morning touches these ruins, shadows tell secrets. They point to walls that once stood tall. They mark the places where people laughed and worked and prayed. Akkad was born along the Tigris River more than 4,000 years ago. Fresh water flowed from distant mountains. The soil turned black and rich. Farmers planted barley and wheat. They built small villages of mud brick. Then came a king named Sargon. He dreamed of something bigger. He wanted one city to rule many lands. He chose this place. He called it Akkad. The name means something like gathering place or unity. Here, different peoples would come together under one crown. Those early days glowed with possibility. Workers shaped millions of bricks by hand. They dried them under the burning sun. Walls rose higher each season. Temples climbed toward the sky in stepped platforms called ziggurats. Priests climbed those stairs to speak with gods. Markets filled with voices in many languages. Merchants brought copper from distant hills. They brought shells from faraway seas. Akkad became the heart of the world. Everything flowed toward it, like water toward a well. But why does Akkad matter today? Because it shows us something true. It shows us that even the strongest places can fall. It shows us that nature is more powerful than any empire. The same sun that blessed the crops could curse them with drought. The same river that gave life could dry to dust. Akkad rose quickly. It fell even faster, yet its memory remained. Later, peoples told stories about the cursed city. They whispered about angry gods. They wondered what mistake brought such ruin. Standing here now in imagination, we connect to that ancient mystery. We feel the same sun they felt. We breathe the same dry air. We wonder about the hands that touched these stones. Connection moves through time like a thread through cloth. When we remember Akkad, we bring it back to life for a moment. We let it speak again. We acknowledge that it existed, that it mattered, that real people with real hopes built something beautiful here. Take a slow breath. Feel the weight of centuries. This is only the beginning. We have 20 chapters to wander these ruins together. Each will reveal another layer, another secret pressed into clay, another whisper from the sand. Akkad waits patiently. It has waited 4,000 years. It can wait for us to understand. Let your mind settle into this ancient place. Let the story unfold, like dawn spreading across desert stone. Akkad did not fade slowly. Cities usually crumble over centuries. Stones fall one by one. Roofs cave in. Gardens return to wild grass. But Akkad vanished almost overnight in the long view of history. One generation knew busy streets and temple songs. The next generation found only silence. What happened? Where did everyone go? For thousands of years, people asked these questions. Even the location of Akkad became a mystery. Archaeologists searched for decades. Some thought they found it, Others disagreed. The cursed city hid itself well. Imagine waking up in Akkad during its final days. The air tastes wrong. Dust coats your tongue. The sky looks pale and sick. Crops that should stand tall in the fields lie withered and brown. The river that always flowed now shows its rocky bed. Old people remember stories of drought from long ago, but nothing like this. Weeks pass, then months. The granaries empty. Families make hard choices. Some stay and pray to gods who seem far away. Others pack what they can carry. They walk toward rumors of water in distant lands. The streets grow quieter each day. Shops close. The great market stands empty. Wind moves through abandoned houses. It makes a low moaning sound through broken windows. Doors hang open. Inside, simple things remain. A clay cup on a table, a child's toy carved from wood, a grinding stone for making bread. These objects tell stories of lives interrupted. People did not plan to leave forever. They thought they might return when the rains came back. But the rains never came. Years passed. Sand began to blow through the streets. It piled against walls. It buried the memories. What does this sudden disappearance show us? It shows how fragile civilization is. We like to think we are separate from nature. We build walls and roofs. We store food for hard times. We make plans for tomorrow, but nature does not care about plans. When climate shifts, everything changes. The people of Akkad did nothing wrong. They worked hard. They built beauty. They created art and kept records. Yet forces beyond their control swept their world away. This teaches us humility. It reminds us to respect the earth and sky. Looking back at these vanished streets connects us to loss. Every culture knows loss. Every family has empty chairs at the table. Akkad's disappearance is personal and universal at the same time. We feel for the mother who locked her door one last time. We feel for the priest who prayed in an empty temple. We feel for the child who dropped a favorite toy in the confusion of leaving. These feelings bridge 4,000 years. They make history human. They make Akkad more than dates and ruins. Close your eyes and picture one last person leaving. Maybe an old woman who was born here. She walks slowly. She stops and looks back. The city of her childhood stands silent behind her. Sun-baked bricks glow in evening light. She knows she will never see it again. She knows her grandchildren will not believe her stories. She turns away. She walks into empty desert. The sand will cover everything. But for this moment, Akkad still stands, still waits, still hopes someone will remember. Words can live longer than stone. In Akkad, people pressed marks into soft clay. They used a reed cut at an angle. The marks looked like tiny wedges. Press once, press twice. Each wedge had meaning. Together they formed words. Together they told stories. This writing is called Cuneiform. It means wedge-shaped. It is one of humanity's oldest scripts. Long after the writers died, their words remained. Baked hard by sun or fire, buried in sand, waiting for someone to read them again. The first symbols were simple pictures. A circle with rays meant sun. Wavy lines meant water. A triangle pointed down meant woman. But pictures have limits. How do you draw a thought? How do you show tomorrow or yesterday? The Akkadian scribes grew clever. They made pictures stand for sounds. The sun symbol could mean the word sun, or it could mean the sound of that word in a different word, like using a picture of a bee and a leaf to write belief. This was brilliant. It opened language wide. Now anything could be written. Young boys trained for years to become scribes. They sat in schools called tablet houses. Masters taught them hundreds of symbols. Students copied lists of words over and over, city names, tree names, star names, lists of kings, mathematical tables. The clay tablets piled high. Some students scratched complaints in the margins. One tablet from that time says the teacher hits too hard. Another says school is boring. Even 4,000 years ago, children were children. They wanted to play instead of study. But those who finished became important people. What do these clay tablets show us now? They show that Akkad was organized, careful, thoughtful. They kept records of everything. How much barley went into the storehouse? How many sheep belonged to the temple? Who owed what to whom? But they also wrote poetry. They wrote prayers. They wrote letters between friends. One tablet is a love song. Another is a lullaby. The words feel familiar. A mother singing to her baby sounds the same across all time. Love does not change. Fear does not change. Hope remains hope. When we read these ancient symbols, we connect directly to Akkadian minds. No voice speaks the words aloud anymore. The language died long ago, but scholars have learned to read the wedges. They unlock the messages. Each translation is like opening a letter from the past. Sometimes the message is boring, a receipt for cattle. Sometimes it pierces the heart, a prayer from someone desperate for rain. Each one adds a piece to our understanding. Each one makes Akkad less mysterious and more human. Run your finger over the image of a clay tablet in your mind. Feel the ridges where the reed pressed down. Each mark took intention. Each symbol took knowledge. Someone sat in sunlight or lamplight. They had a thought. They wanted that thought to outlive them. So they pressed it into clay. And here we are 4,000 years later, receiving that message, reading those words, bringing that voice back to life for a moment. This is magic. This is time travel. This is connection deeper than any curse. Every civilization leaves traces. Sometimes those traces are grand temples and statues. Sometimes they are small, a bronze pin, a clay bowl, a stone for grinding grain. In Akkad's ruins, archaeologists found thousands of these quiet objects, each one held by human hands, each one used in daily life. A merchant's weight for measuring silver, a woman's comb carved from bone, a child's marble made of clay. These things tell stories that words cannot. They speak of ordinary moments, of breakfast and bedtime, of work and rest, of life before the curse fell. Cylinder seals were especially important in Akkad. These were small stone tubes carved with pictures and words. When you rolled them across wet clay, they left an impression. Each seal was unique. It marked ownership. It proved identity. Kings had elaborate seals showing gods and battles. Merchants had simpler ones with their names. Even farmers might own a plain seal for marking jars of oil. Some seals showed mythical creatures, winged bulls, tree spirits, sun gods. The tiny carved details are astonishing. How did they cut such fine lines into hard stone? With patience, with skill, with time that no longer hurries. Pottery tells its own story. The Akkadians made beautiful vessels. Some were practical large jars for storing grain or water. Others were decorative small bottles for perfume or medicine. The clay came from the riverbank. Potters shaped it on spinning wheels. They painted designs before firing, geometric patterns, stylized flowers, sometimes animal shapes, red and black pigments on buff-colored clay. When a pot broke, pieces scattered, but clay lasts. Even shattered, it teaches us. The curve of a rim shows how they drank. The size of a storage jar shows how they planned for winter. What do these artifacts reveal about Akkadian life? They reveal care. Even simple objects show attention. A well-made bowl is not just functional, it is pleasant to hold, smooth against the lips. The weight feels right. Someone took pride in making it well. The same with seals and tools and jewelry. Quality mattered. Beauty mattered. This tells us that Akkadians valued their daily experience. They did not just survive, they tried to live well, to surround themselves with things that worked and also pleased the eye. This is deeply human. This is something we share with them. These objects connect us Because we use similar things. We eat from bowls. We secure our belongings. We mark what is ours. The forms change, but the needs remain constant. Holding an Akkadian bowl in imagination, we touch those ancient hands. We complete a circuit across time. Their fingers shape the clay. Our fingers trace the shape. For that moment, 4,000 years collapse. We stand together in the same eternal now. The curse that scattered the people could not destroy this connection. The objects remember. They wait in museums and storage rooms. They wait to tell their quiet stories to anyone who will listen. Pick up an imaginary seal in your mind. Feel its weight. It fits perfectly in your palm. The carved surface has a satisfying texture. You can almost sense the person who owned it, who carried it, who pressed it into clay at the end of a long day of trading. Their hand and your hand share the same shape, the same warmth, the same life. This is not magic. This is memory. This is the way small things defeat time. This is how a bowl or a seal becomes a bridge. Walk across it carefully. Others have gone this way before you. Every empire begins with one person's dream. For Akkad, that person was Sargon. His name means true king or legitimate king. But his beginning was not royal. Legends say he was born to a priestess who could not keep him. She placed him in a basket of reeds. She set him in the river. A gardener found him, raised him, taught him to tend date palms and maintain irrigation canals. The boy learnt about water and how it brings life. He learnt about thirst and how it brings death. These lessons would shape an empire. Sargon grew strong and clever. He entered the service of a king in the city of Kish. He became the cupbearer. This meant he stood close to power. He heard plans. He saw weaknesses. When the time was right, Sargon took his chance. Different sources tell different stories. Some say he overthrew his king. Others say he simply walked away and built his own city. Either way, around 2334 BCE, Sargon founded Akkad. He made it his capital. From there, he would reach out to grab the whole world. His army was unstoppable. 54 battles, ancient records say, and Sargon won them all. He marched south to conquer Sumer with its ancient cities Uruk, Lagash. He marched north into Assyria. He marched west to the Mediterranean Sea. He marched east into Elam. His empire stretched from the Persian Gulf to the mountains of Anatolia. One ruler, one law, one trade network. This had never happened before. The world had been many kingdoms. Sargon made it one. For a brief, shining moment, unity was real. What does Sargon's empire show us? It shows what human will can accomplish. One man from nothing became the most powerful person in the known world. But it also shows the limits of will. Sargon died. His sons ruled after him. His grandson Naram-Sin called himself a god. But empires held together by force are fragile. When the center weakens, the edges pull away. The same cities Sargon conquered would rebel. The same trade routes would close. And when the climate turned against them, the administrative structure could not save them. Strength alone is never enough. The connection between Sargon and us runs through ambition. We understand wanting more, wanting to build, wanting to leave a mark. Sargon wanted his name remembered forever. In that, he succeeded. 4,000 years later, we still say his name, we still tell his story, but we also see the cost. How many died in those 54 battles? How many families were torn apart? How many local traditions were erased? Empire creates and destroys at the same time. The glory and the grief cannot be separated. They are the same story told from different positions. Imagine Sargon in his palace on a quiet night. The battles are won. The empire is built. He is old now. His bones ache. He cannot sleep as easily as when he was young. He walks onto a balcony. He looks out over Akkad. Lights flicker in 1,000 windows. He hears the city breathe. This is what he built. This is what he willed into existence. Does he feel pride? Certainly. Does he feel peace? Perhaps not. The burden of being remembered is knowing that memory will judge you. And judgment, like water, finds every crack eventually. Before sleep each night, families gathered. When darkness came, work stopped. Oil lamps flickered. Children pressed close. And the old stories began. Stories of gods who walked the earth when the world was young. Stories of heroes who fought monsters. Stories explaining why the sun rises and sets, why crops grow, why rivers flood. These myths were more than entertainment. They were how Akkadians understood their world. They were maps for living. They were comfort in uncertain times. The gods of Akkad were powerful and close, not distant like stars. They lived in temples in the city. They ate the food offered to them. They smelled the incense. At least that is what people believed. Each god had responsibilities. Shamash was the sun god who brought justice. Ishtar was the goddess of love and war. Enki controlled the sweet waters underground. Enlil ruled the storms. These gods had emotions. They fell in love. They argued. They made mistakes. When they were happy, crops grew tall. When they were angry, disaster came. This made sense to people whose lives depended on forces they could not control. One famous myth tells of a great flood. The gods grew tired of human noise, too much shouting, too much complaining. They decided to wash the world clean. But one god felt sorry for human. He warned a wise man named Utnapishtim. "Build a boat," the god said. "Take your family, take animals." The flood came. Water covered mountains. Everything drowned except the boat. After many days, the water fell. The boat landed on a mountain. Utnapishtim released a dove. It returned. He released a raven. It did not return. The land was dry again. This story reminded Akkadians that survival is a gift. That wisdom matters. That even when gods are angry, kindness can save us. What do these myths show us now? They show that Akkadians ask the same questions we ask. Why do bad things happen? Is there meaning in suffering? Can we influence our fate through prayer or right action? The answers they found feel ancient and yet familiar. Respect the powers beyond your control. Live justly. Remember, you are small in a vast cosmos. These truths do not age. The specific gods change names. The stories shift details. But the core wisdom remains. How to be human. How to face uncertainty. How to find meaning when the world seems hostile. These old myths connect us to universal human experience. Every culture has flood stories. Every culture has heroes who journey to the underworld. Every culture explains death and weather through divine action. The details vary, but the structure matches. This suggests something deep, something wired into human consciousness. We need stories that are bigger than daily life. We need to feel part of something eternal. The Akkadians sitting around their fires were doing what we do when we watch films or read books. They were exploring what it means to be alive. They were learning how to carry fear and hope at the same time. Picture the firelight dancing on their faces. The storyteller's voice rises and falls. Children gasp at the scary parts. Someone asks a question. The story pauses. The elder explains. Then continues. Outside, the desert night is cold and full of sounds. But here by the fire, there is warmth and meaning. The story wraps around them like a blanket. It tells them who they are, where they came from, what they should value. This is the power of myth. It does not matter if the events actually happened. What matters is the truth underneath. The truth that survives even when cities fall, even when languages die, even when the fires go cold. Akkad did not exist alone in the world. To the south lay Sumer, ancient even when Akkad was young. Sumerian cities like Ur and Uruk had been there for centuries. They had invented writing before Akkad existed. Their kings built the first ziggurats. Their priests mapped the stars. When Sargon conquered Sumer, he did not destroy these cities. He absorbed them. He took their wisdom. He borrowed their gods. He made Sumerian scribes teach Akkadian children. This mixing created something new. A blend. A culture that honored both traditions. To the east lay Elam in what we now call Iran. The Elamites were different. They spoke another language. They worshipped other gods. But they traded with Akkad. Precious stones came from Elam's mountains. Timber came from their forests. In return, Akkad sent barley and fine textiles. Sometimes the two peoples fought. Sometimes they married into each other's royal families. The border shifted like sand in wind, but the connection remained. Objects from Elam have been found in Akkad's ruins. Objects from Akkad travelled to Elam. Trade creates threads that outlast empires. Far to the west beyond the desert lay cities on the coast. Byblos, Ugarit, other ports now lost. Ships carried goods across the Mediterranean. Cedar wood from Lebanon, purple dye from sea snails, wine in tall jars. These western cities knew about Akkad. Merchants told stories of the great king in the east. They brought Akkadian cylinder seals home as curiosities. They taught their children Akkadian numbers for trade calculations. Ideas travelled with the goods. Writing systems influenced each other. Religious concepts mixed and merged. The ancient world was more connected than we often imagine. What do these connections show us? They show that isolation is a myth. No culture develops alone. Every civilization is a conversation between many voices. Akkad took ideas from Sumer, adapted them, added their own innovations, then passed them forward to Assyria and Babylon. The Babylonians remembered Sargon and told his stories. The Assyrians claimed descent from Akkad's glory. Even after the physical city vanished, its cultural DNA spread through the region. The curse that emptied the streets could not erase the ideas. Ideas travel light. They survive disasters. They wait to be remembered. These ancient trade routes connect us to globalization. We think our interconnected world is new. But 4,000 years ago, a person in Akkad could eat dates from Egypt, wear jewelry made from Afghan lapis lazuli, read on clay from local riverbanks pressed with a reed cut from local marshes but copied from a text originally from Sumer. Different languages, different gods, one network of exchange. This shows that human beings naturally reach out. We trade, we share, we borrow and lend. This is not a modern invention. This is our nature. Walls and borders are recent ideas. Openness is ancient. Imagine a merchant travelling from Akkad to distant Dilmun, an island in the Gulf. He has travelled this route before. He knows the wells where water is sweet. He knows the villages where travellers are welcome. Along the way, he stops and tells news from home. He hears news from other places. By the time he returns to Akkad, he carries more than trade goods. He carries stories, songs, new words, a recipe for beer, a prayer to a foreign god who might listen. He is a thread in the larger fabric. His journey connects the whole cloth. Without him and thousands like him, the world would be separate islands. Instead, it is one continuous shore, and we who remember Akkad are part of that same endless connection. Night in ancient Akkad was dark in ways we cannot imagine. No electric lights pushed back the shadows. No glowing screens stole attention from the sky. When the sun set, true darkness came, and with it, the stars emerged in their full glory, thousands of them. The river of light we call the Milky Way, planets moving against the background of fixed stars, the moon in its phases. For the Akkadians, the night sky was not just beautiful, it was a book, a calendar, a message from the gods. Priests climbed to the tops of ziggurats to read that message more clearly. Mesopotamian astronomy was surprisingly advanced. Priests tracked Venus for years. They noticed it appeared as morning star for a time, then vanished, then reappeared as evening star. They calculated when eclipses would happen. Not perfectly, but well enough to prepare. They divided the sky into sections. They named constellations. Some of those names we still use today. Leo the lion, Taurus the bull, Scorpio the scorpion. These were not just pictures. They marked the seasons. When certain stars rose at dawn, it was time to plant. When others set, it was time to harvest. The sky was a farmer's guide. The Akkadians believed the stars influenced events on Earth. When two planets came close, it meant something. A war might start. A king might die. Priests kept detailed records. They compared past star positions with past events. They looked for patterns. Sometimes they found them. Sometimes they forced connections that were not really there. But the effort shows something important. They believed the universe was ordered, not random, not chaotic. If you studied carefully enough, you could understand. You could predict. You could perhaps influence events through ritual performed at the right time, under the right stars. What does this careful star watching show us? It shows the beginning of science. Yes, they mixed astronomy with astrology. They confused correlation with causation. But they observed. They recorded. They tested ideas against reality. When predictions failed, they adjusted. This is the foundation of scientific method. The gods might control the stars. But the stars moved in predictable ways. Laws governed them. Understanding those laws gave power. Not magical power, real power. The power to plant at the right time. The power to prepare for trouble. The power to tell farmers when the river would flood based on seasonal star positions. These ancient astronomers connect us through wonder. We have telescopes they could not imagine. We know the planets are worlds like our own. We know the stars are distant suns. But when we look up on a clear night, we feel what they felt. Smallness. Awe. The sense that we are part of something vast and old. The same stars they watched still wheel overhead. The same moon waxes and wanes. When we learn constellations, we walk in their footsteps. When we notice Venus bright in the evening, we see what they saw. The sky is the only thing that has not changed. Stand outside in your imagination tonight. The desert air is cool. The ziggurat rises behind you. You are a priest in training. Your master points to the eastern horizon. Watch that bright star, he says. Note the time. Mark it in clay. Tomorrow night, watch again. Night after night, you watch. You see the pattern emerge. You understand that change is regular, that time can be measured, that the universe, for all its vastness, operates by rules. This knowledge fills you with something that is both humility and pride. You are tiny, but you can understand. You can map infinity. And in that understanding, you touch something eternal. Sometimes, the greatest powers are invisible. You cannot see wind until it moves sand. You cannot see time until you notice changed faces. In Akkad, invisible forces shaped everything. Climate, politics, economics, fear, hope. These moved beneath daily life like underground rivers. Most people felt their effects without understanding their causes. The harvest fails. Is it our fault? Did we anger the gods? Or is something else happening? Something beyond prayer and ritual. Something we cannot control, no matter how hard we try. Climate was the ultimate invisible force. The Akkadian Empire rose during a favorable period. Rainfall was relatively reliable. The Tigris and Euphrates flowed strong. Snowmelt from northern mountains fed the rivers each spring. Irrigation canals carried water to fields. The system worked. Surplus grain filled storehouses. Population grew. Cities expanded. But climate is never permanent. Around 2200 BCE, something shifted. The rain patterns changed. Less moisture reached Mesopotamia. Drought began. Not 1 year, not 2. Decades. Perhaps a century. Rivers ran lower, canals turned to mud, fields produced less, then nothing. The invisible force of climate destroyed what armies could not. Modern scientists have studied this ancient climate shift. They drilled into the sea floor, they examined lake beds, they analyzed pollen preserved in sediment. The evidence is clear. A major drought struck the region. It was not local. It affected a huge area from Egypt to Pakistan. Called the 4.2 kiloyear event. Entire civilizations collapsed. Egypt's old kingdom fell. The Indus Valley cities were abandoned. And Akkad vanished. This was not curse or divine anger. This was planetary climate variability. The kind that still shapes human destiny. The kind we are learning to influence in new and dangerous ways. What does this invisible climate force show us? It shows that we are not separate from nature. We like to think our technology protects us, our buildings, our storage systems, our trade networks. But these are buffers, not shields. When environmental conditions shift dramatically, civilizations shake. The Akkadians did everything right. They were smart, organized, powerful, yet they could not survive the drought. This is humbling. It reminds us that we are part of the Earth's systems, not above them. Our fate is tied to rainfall and temperature and seasons. Always has been, always will be. Understanding climate's invisible hand connects us to the present. Today we face climate changes of our own making. We burn ancient carbon, we warm the atmosphere, we shift rain patterns. The consequences will outlast empires, just as the drought outlasted Akkad. When we study what happened 4,000 years ago, we are not just looking at the past. We are seeing a preview, a warning written in abandoned cities. The invisible forces are the same, only the causes differ. Akkad did not cause their drought, but they suffered it. We are causing ours. And we will suffer it too, unless we change course. The ruins whisper this. If we listen, picture Akkad during the final years. A priest stands on the temple roof. He has prayed every day for 5 years. The gods do not answer. The sky remains bronze and empty. Below, the streets grow quieter. More houses stand abandoned. Children cry from hunger. Old people die first. Then the very young. Then everyone starts moving, slowly at first, then in streams. The invisible hand of climate has closed into a fist. It is squeezing the life from the city. The priest does not understand climate science. He does not know about atmospheric circulation patterns. He only knows that everything is ending, and nothing he does makes any difference. This is the terror of invisible forces. This is the curse that needs no gods. History and myth dance together. Sometimes they are partners, sometimes rivals. For Akkad, separating the two took thousands of years. Ancient peoples told stories about the cursed city. They said the gods destroyed it for human arrogance. Later peoples repeated the stories. They added details. By the time archaeologists began searching, legend had wrapped around truth, like vines around stone. Finding the real Akkad beneath the stories became a puzzle, a challenge, a quest that continues even now. The ancient text called The Curse of Akkad is our best literary source. Written long after the city fell, it tells of King Naram-Sin, Sargon's grandson. Naram-Sin declared himself a god. He wore horns on his crown like divine beings. He allowed temples to be built in his name. This pride angered Enlil, the storm god. Enlil cursed Akkad. He sent enemies from the mountains. The Gutians, barbarians who knew no civilization. They swept down and destroyed everything. The land became waste. Animals fled. The people scattered. The curse complete. This story was told for centuries, written and rewritten, copied by scribes in many cities. It seemed like truth. But archaeology tells a different story. Excavations have not found massive destruction from invasion. No burn layers from conquering armies. Instead, they found abandonment. Buildings left standing but empty. Erosion from wind and time, not fire and sword. Chemical analysis of soil shows the drought. Pollen studies confirm the changing climate. The Gutians probably did invade. But they invaded a region already weakened, already dying from drought. They were the symptom, not the cause. The real curse was not divine anger. It was climate collapse. But that is a harder story to tell. Easier to blame a proud king and angry gods. Easier to make it a moral tale. What does this mixing of truth and legend show us? It shows how humans make meaning from catastrophe. Bad things happen. We need explanations. If drought is random and uncontrollable, that is terrifying. But if drought is punishment for sin, at least there is logic. If we behave better, we will be safe. This gives comfort. It gives a sense of control, even when control is illusion. The Curse of Akkad is really about trying to understand why good things end, why empires fall, why even the strong must die. The answer the ancients found was moral failure. Our answer is environmental change. Both are true in their way, both are stories we tell to sleep at night. Archaeological truth connects us to evidence-based thinking. We no longer blame gods for drought. We measure rainfall. We study climate patterns. We use science. But we still tell stories to make sense of loss. We still need narratives that explain tragedy. When our own civilization faces climate crisis, we will tell stories too. Some will be accurate. Some will be convenient myths. Future archaeologists will sift through both. They will try to separate what really happened from what we wished happened. They will face the same challenge we face with Akkad. The challenge of seeing clearly through the fog of time and desire. Imagine holding two tablets. One tells the myth. Enlil cursed the city. One tells the science. Climate shift caused crop failure. Both are true. Both are false. The complete truth is bigger than either. It includes human hubris and environmental limits. It includes moral lessons and geological forces. It includes what people believed happened and what evidence shows happened. History is not simple. It is not one story. It is all the stories at once. And we must hold them all. Feel the weight of both tablets. This is the burden and gift of looking backward. Myth gives meaning. Science gives accuracy. Together, they give wisdom. Or at least the possibility of wisdom, if we listen carefully. Time moves forward, but history looks back. To understand Akkad's fall, we must understand its rise. Around 2334 BCE, Sargon founded his capital. This is our starting point. Not a beginning, exactly the region already had ancient cities, but the beginning of something new. A unified empire. For 56 years, Sargon ruled. He expanded borders. He secured trade routes. He built temples. He was strong until he was old. Then death came, as it comes to everyone. His son Ramush took the throne. Ramush ruled only 9 years, 2278 to 2270 BCE. Ancient sources suggest he was murdered, perhaps by his brother Manishtushu, perhaps by others. Palace politics are always bloody. Manishtushu took power next and ruled 15 years. He continued his father's campaigns. He claimed victories in Elam and along the Gulf, but cracks were showing. Subject cities rebelled more frequently. Each rebellion had to be crushed. Each crushing bred resentment. The empire held together, but the effort increased. The center strained to control the edges. Then came Naram-Sin, the most powerful and most controversial Akkadian king. He ruled from approximately 2254 to 2218 BCE. About 36 years. This was Akkad's peak. Naram-Sin called himself God. He claimed victory over 9 kings in a single battle. He built magnificent temples. Artists carved his image on stone, showing him climbing mountains, trampling enemies. But even at this height, pressures built. The climate was beginning to shift. Rainfall patterns changed. Harvests declined slowly at first. Problems that would have been manageable became crises. An empire stretched thin has no margin for error. What happened after Naram-Sin's death remains unclear. His son Shar-Kali-Shari ruled during mounting chaos from about 2217 to 2193 BCE. Records from this period grow sparse and confused. Cities broke away. The Gutians invaded from the mountains. Administration collapsed. After Shar-Kali-Shari's death, several kings claimed power. Their names are preserved but little else. Dudu, Shu-Turul, each ruled briefly. Each faced impossible circumstances. The drought was full force now. People abandoned cities across the region. Akkad was not unique. It was part of a civilization-wide collapse. By 2154 BCE, the empire was completely gone. Roughly 180 years from founding to fall. Less than 10 generations. A long human lifetime in terms of civilizations. This timeline shows us how quickly things can change. In one lifetime, Akkad went from small city to empire capital. In another lifetime, it went from empire capital to ruins. The people who built the first walls never imagined it would end. The people who abandoned the last buildings never imagined it had been. This is the lesson of timelines. They reveal patterns invisible to those living through them. They show us that normal is temporary, that stability is not guaranteed, that even the longest reign is a brief candle in the darkness of centuries. Plot these dates on a line in your mind. Mark each king. Watch the line grow during Sargon. Watch it peak under Naram-Sin. Watch it contract and fragment. Now add yourself to the timeline. Add your life. Add your city. Where are you on your own arc? Rising? Peaking? Beginning the long decline? We cannot know. That is the terror and freedom of living inside time rather than looking back at it. Akkad's timeline is finished. Ours continues. We write it with each choice, each day, each decision to care for the world we inhabit or to take more than it can give. The timeline judges everything eventually. But while we live, it remains unwritten. This is where hope lives, in the space between past and future, in the eternal now, where anything might still be possible. Dates tell us when, but meaning tells us why. Looking at Akkad's timeline reveals patterns. The empire's rise was explosive, 50 years from city to superpower. This speed is both impressive and dangerous. Fast growth means shallow roots. When crisis comes, there is nothing deep to hold on to. Slow growth builds resilience. Quick conquest builds fragility. Sargon's military genius created an empire faster than administrative systems could solidify. He controlled land, but true control requires time, requires acceptance, requires systems that outlast individuals. Another pattern emerges in the succession problems. Rimush, possibly murdered. Manishtushu taking power violently. Even Naram-Sin faced rebellions throughout his reign. What does this show? It shows the empire never fully stabilized. Force held it together, not loyalty. When the center weakened even slightly, the edges pulled away immediately. This is the pattern of forced unity. It can look impressive on maps, all that territory one color. But beneath the surface, people wait. They remember their own kings, their own ways. The moment opportunity comes, they reclaim independence. Akkad's timeline reveals an empire that was always one crisis away from collapse. The environmental pattern is perhaps most important. The timeline shows that climate stress began before the final collapse. Small harvest failures during Naram-Sin's later years. Increasing rebellions correlating with food scarcity. By Shar-Kali-Shari's time, the system was already failing. The Gutian invasions came after the weakening, not before. This is how environmental collapse works. Not sudden, gradual, one bad year, then another, then 3 in a row. Each crisis depletes reserves. Each recovery is incomplete. The spiral tightens, until one day you realize the city is half empty. The next day, it is gone. The timeline shows this slow-motion catastrophe clearly when you know what to look for. What do these patterns teach us? They teach that speed is not always strength, that unity imposed by force is temporary, that environmental stability undergirds everything else. Remove that foundation, and the whole structure collapses, regardless of military might or administrative genius. These lessons apply beyond Akkad. They apply to every civilization that has risen and fallen. Rome, the Maya, Easter Island, each timeline reveals similar patterns: overexpansion, environmental stress, social breakdown. The details differ, but the structure repeats. This is not coincidence. This is human nature meeting ecological limits. Connecting these patterns to our present is sobering. Our civilization is based on fast growth, on forced unity of global markets, on environmental systems we stress without fully understanding. Our timeline is still being written. But if we study past timelines carefully, we can see warning signs in our own. Species extinction accelerating, climate patterns shifting, social cohesion fraying. These are early markers. They give us time, not much time, but some. Akkad's people did not have the luxury of hindsight. They did not have other civilizations' timelines to study. We do. The question is whether we will learn, whether we will adjust our trajectory, or whether we will insist everything is fine until one day our own cities stand empty beneath blowing sand. Draw two timelines side by side in your imagination. One shows Akkad from 2334 to 2154 BCE. The other shows our civilization from 1800 CE to today. Look at the shapes, see the explosive growth, the resource extraction, the environmental impact. The curves are disturbingly similar, but our timeline continues forward into blank space. Into the future, we will create or destroy. What will future archaeologists find in our ruins? What patterns will they see that we cannot? Or will we be the first to look at the pattern, understand it, and choose differently? This is the gift of timelines. They give us perspective. They let us see ourselves from outside. They offer the chance, however small, to learn from ghosts, to let the dead teach the living, to break the cycle before it completes one more turn. Art speaks when words fall silent. The Akkadians left images carved in stone, cylinder seals pressed into clay, reliefs on palace walls, victory monuments celebrating military triumph. These images were not just decoration, they were statements, declarations. They said, we were here, we were powerful, we mattered, and they succeeded. 4,000 years later, we look at these images and feel their intended impact. Power, order, divine approval. The art does its work across the chasm of time. The most famous Akkadian artwork is the victory stele of Naram-Sin, a tall stone carved with the king climbing a mountain. His soldiers follow below. Defeated enemies tumble down the slope. Above, stars represent God's watching approval. Naram-Sin is larger than everyone else. He wears the horned crown of divinity. The composition is dynamic. The eye follows the diagonal climb. The message is clear. This king ascends to heaven itself. He tramples opposition. He receives divine blessing. Later, civilizations looked at this stele with awe. The Babylonians conquered the region and took the stele as prize. They displayed it. They imitated its style. The Assyrians later did the same. Akkadian art created a visual language that echoed for centuries. Other images showed different aspects of life. Cylinder seals often depicted mythological scenes: a hero wrestling a bull, a tree of life protected by guardians, gods receiving offerings. These small images were portable theology. Rolled across clay, they left impressions. Each seal was unique, like a signature, but the themes repeated, the symbols were shared. You could travel from city to city and recognize the iconography. A winged bull meant the same thing in Akkad as in Babylon centuries later. This visual continuity created cultural unity stronger than any military conquest. It created a visual vocabulary that defined Mesopotamian civilization for millennia. What does Akkadian art show us about their values? It shows they valued hierarchy. Kings are always bigger than subjects, gods bigger than kings. Size equals importance in their visual grammar. It shows they valued order. Compositions are balanced and structured. Even chaotic battle scenes have geometric organization. It shows they valued connection to the divine. Gods appear in almost every formal artwork. They watch, they approve, they authorize human action. The art insists that earthly power reflects heavenly order, that what happens here mirrors what happens in the realm of gods. This worldview shaped every aspect of their society. These visual echoes connect across cultures. When the Assyrians built their empire 600 years after Akkad fell, they deliberately copied Akkadian style. They wanted that association, that legitimacy. Akkad was legendary by then. To look like Akkad was to claim their mantle. The Babylonians did the same. Even the Persians who came much later were influenced. The horned crown, the stepped ziggurat, the cylinder seal. These visual elements spread across the ancient Near East. They became the common language of power. And that language began in Akkad, began with artists who shaped stone and pressed symbols into clay. Began with the decision to make beauty that would last. Hold a cylinder seal in your imagination. It fits in your palm perfectly. The stone is cool and smooth except where the image is carved. You can feel the tiny grooves with your fingertip. Each line was cut with purpose, with skill, with the artist's full attention. Now roll it across wet clay in your mind. Watch the image appear. See how the three-dimensional carving becomes two-dimensional picture. This transformation is magic. This is how invisible becomes visible, how thought becomes thing, how one person's vision can speak to someone else 4,000 years in the future. You are that someone else. The seal speaks to you. The art fulfills its purpose. Time collapses. The artist's hand and your hand share the same object, the same wonder, the same brief victory over death. When we look at Akkadian art today, we see differently than they saw. We bring our own eyes, our own assumptions, our own context. An Akkadian looking at the Victory Stele saw divine kingship, political authority, right order. We see propaganda. We see ego. We see the justification of violence. Both views are valid. Both are incomplete. The truth of art lies partly in the creator's intention and partly in the viewer's interpretation. And that gap, that space between ancient meaning and modern understanding, is where interesting questions live. Modern museums display Akkadian artifacts behind glass. Soft lights shine on ancient clay. Labels explain historical context. Visitors walk slowly, quietly, respecting the age and rarity. But in Akkad, these objects were not rare. They were everywhere. Cylinder seals hung from people's necks or wrists, clay tablets piled in storerooms. Reliefs decorated public buildings where thousands passed daily. The art was part of life, not separate from it. We have museumified the ancient world. We have made it precious and distant. This changes meaning. A seal in a museum case is art. A seal in daily use is tool. Same object, different realities. Photography has changed how we see ancient art. Before cameras, you had to travel to see artifacts, or trust drawings in books. Now we can see high-resolution images instantly. We can zoom in. We can rotate three-dimensional models. This is powerful. It democratizes access, but it also flattens. The screen cannot convey the weight of a tablet in your hand. the coolness of stone, the slight roughness of clay. These physical properties are part of the art's meaning. A culture that presses symbols into soft earth thinks differently than a culture that types on glass. The materiality matters, and we lose some of that meaning when everything becomes pixels. What does our modern interpretation reveal? It reveals our values. When we focus on the violence in Akkadian art, we reveal our discomfort with state power. When we admire the craftsmanship, we reveal our respect for skill and patience. When we wonder about the artists' names, almost always unknown, we reveal our modern focus on individual genius over collective creation. The Akkadians rarely signed their work. The work itself mattered. The function mattered. Personal fame less so. This is alien to our celebrity culture. Yet there is wisdom in anonymity. The art outlasts the artist regardless. The seal still communicates whether we know who carved it or not. These ancient images connect us through aesthetic sense. Humans across all times respond to certain visual principles: balance, proportion, skillful execution. When we look at a well-made Akkadian seal, we recognize beauty even if the specific symbols mean nothing to us. This recognition suggests something universal, something wired into human perception. We may not worship their gods, we may not accept their social hierarchy, but we can still appreciate the elegant line, the careful composition, the hand's skill. This aesthetic connection is a kind of time travel, not perfect, not complete, but real enough to matter. Stand in an imaginary museum gallery. A case displays Akkadian seals, soft light, climate-controlled air, complete silence except for the whisper of your own breath. You lean close. The glass reflects your face superimposed over the ancient stone. For a moment, past and present occupy the same space. You see the carved image. You see yourself seeing it. This double vision is the gift of museums. The curse, too. We preserve, we protect. We honor, but we also separate. We make the living past into dead artifact. The challenge is to see through the glass, to imagine the seal warm from body heat, pressed into clay at day's end, marking what is mine, what is real, what endures. If you can imagine that even for a moment you have crossed the glass, you have touched 4,000 years, you have made the ancient art alive again. For thousands of years, people wondered why Akkad fell. They told stories of angry gods, of barbarian invasions, of prideful kings. These stories satisfied the need for explanation. They provided moral lessons, but they were incomplete. The real answer lay buried not in texts, but in dirt, in layers of sediment at the bottom of the sea, in chemical traces in ancient soil, in the patient work of scientists asking new kinds of questions, questions the ancients never thought to ask. What was the weather like? How much rain fell? What grew in the fields? These simple questions would unlock the mystery. In the 1,990 seconds, scientists began studying sediment cores from the Gulf of Oman. They drilled deep into the sea floor. They pulled up columns of mud that recorded thousands of years. Each layer was like a page in a book. The pages told the story of dust storms. When dust blows from land into sea, it leaves a signature, certain minerals, certain chemicals. The scientists found a dramatic spike in dust around 4,200 years ago, a spike that lasted for about 300 years. This meant intense drought, massive windstorms, agricultural collapse. This was not myth, this was data, physical evidence that could be measured and verified. Other scientists studied ancient lake beds in Syria. They looked at pollen preserved in sediment. Different plants leave different pollen. When climate shifts, vegetation changes. The pollen layers showed the same story. Around 2,200 BCE, trees disappeared. Grassland expanded. Desert plants moved in. This meant rainfall declined sharply. farmers abandoned fields. Nomadic herders moved in. The sediment did not lie. It had no agenda. It simply recorded what happened. And what happened was catastrophic climate change. Not gradual, sudden. A shift that occurred within a single human lifetime. One generation knew regular rain. The next knew only dust. More evidence came from ancient wells that dried up, from grain storage records that showed declining harvests, from skeletal remains showing malnutrition, from the abandonment of sites across the entire region. Egypt's old kingdom collapsed at the same time. The Indus Valley civilization declined. The Minoan culture on Crete was disrupted. This was not a local event. This was a regional climate crisis affecting millions of people. Akkad was not singled out by divine curse. Akkad was caught in a planetary climate shift. The kind that happens periodically throughout Earth's history. The kind that destroys civilizations regardless of their power or virtue. What does this scientific revelation show us? It shows that environment is destiny. All the military might, all the administrative genius, all the temples and prayers. None of it mattered when the rain stopped. The climate does not negotiate. It does not care about human plans. It operates by physical laws that preceded us and will outlast us. This is humbling. It puts human power in perspective. But it also gives us knowledge. If we understand the climate system, we can perhaps anticipate changes, adapt to them, maybe even influence them. The Akkadians had no such knowledge. They could only watch the sky and pray. We have more options. The question is whether we will use them. The scientific revelation connects ancient Akkad to our present crisis in uncomfortable ways. We too face climate change. Ours is different, caused by human activity rather than natural cycle. But the physics is similar. Temperature changes affect rainfall. Rainfall affects agriculture. Agriculture affects everything else. When crops fail repeatedly, societies strain. When strain continues, societies break. We have the advantage of foreknowledge. We can see the storm coming. We can measure it, model it, predict it. What we do with that knowledge will determine whether future scientists study our ruins with the same sad curiosity we bring to Akkad. Will they find the same pattern? Civilization at its height, warning signs ignored, collapse inevitable, or will they find something new, a society that saw danger and changed course, that chose adaptation over denial, that broke the ancient cycle? The choice is ours. The sediment is already recording our answer. The night sky has not changed. The same stars that watched Akkad rise still wheel overhead. The same moon waxes and wanes. The same planets trace their ancient paths. If stars could remember, they would remember when Akkad's lights joined their glow. Thousands of oil lamps burning in the darkness, fires in courtyards, torches on city walls. From above, the city would have been a constellation fallen to earth, a gathering of human light pushing back against the void. Now that light is gone. The ruins sit in darkness, but the stars remain. Indifferent, eternal. They watched us come. They watch us go. They will watch whatever comes next. Akkadian astronomers studied those stars with devotion that bordered on worship. They believed the cosmos spoke, that planetary movements carried messages. They were wrong about the messages. Planets do not foretell human events. But they were right about something deeper. They were right that we are part of the cosmic story, that what happens on Earth is connected to what happens in heaven, not through astrology, through physics, through chemistry, through the fact that we are made of stardust. The iron in our blood was forged in dying stars billions of years ago. The calcium in our bones, the carbon in our cells. We are literally cosmic beings. The Akkadians intuited this truth, even if they misunderstood the mechanism. Modern astronomy has given us knowledge the Akkadians never dreamed. We know the stars are suns, we know the planets are worlds, we know the universe is vast beyond imagining. Billions of galaxies, trillions of stars, perhaps countless planets where other beings look up and wonder. This knowledge should make Akkad seem less important. One small city on one small planet in one ordinary galaxy. A city that existed for less than 2 centuries. A tiny flicker in cosmic time. Why should it matter? And yet it does. Because scale does not determine significance. A single human life matters even though we are small. A single city matters even though it vanished. Meaning is not about size. It is about connection, about recognition, about memory. What does the cosmic perspective show us? It shows that everything is temporary. Stars are born and die. Galaxies collide and merge. Even the universe itself had a beginning and will have an end. Akkad's fall is not unusual from this view. It is the nature of things. All that rises eventually falls. All that gathers eventually scatters. Entropy is the ultimate law. But this perspective also shows that temporary does not mean meaningless. A sunset is temporary. A song is temporary. Our embrace is temporary. These moments still matter. They matter precisely because they do not last. Because they are rare against the background of cosmic silence. Because they are islands of complexity and beauty in a universe trending toward cold emptiness. The stars connect us because they are the one thing unchanged. An Akkadian astronomer and a modern astronomer look at the same sky, see the same patterns, feel the same awe. This is a direct connection across 4,000 years. It bypasses all the changes in language, culture, technology. It reaches to something fundamental, the human need to look up, to wonder, to feel small and yet part of something infinite. When we study Akkad, we often focus on differences, different gods, different language, different tools. But under the stars, we are the same. Temporary beings aware of our temporariness, seeking meaning in a universe that offers none, finding it anyway in the simple act of looking up together. Go outside tonight in your imagination. Stand where Akkad once stood. The desert is cold. The sky is clear. More stars than you can count fill your vision. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a river of light. You could be in any time, past, present, future. The stars do not mark years, they mark eternity. An Akkadian priest stood here once, looked up at these same stars, wondered the same things you wonder. Where do we come from? Where do we go? Does any of it matter? The stars do not answer. They never have. They never will. But somehow their silence is enough. In that vast quiet, we find our own voices. In that darkness, we see our own light. In our smallness beneath their vastness, we locate dignity. We are here. We wonder. Therefore we matter. This is what the cosmic silence teaches. This is what the stars remember about Akkad and about us. History does not repeat exactly, but it rhymes. The pattern of Akkad's rise and fall appears again and again across time. Rome was eternal until it was not. The Maya built magnificent cities, then abandoned them to jungle. The Khmer Empire carved Angkor Wat, then faded. Easter Island civilization collapsed. The Anasazi disappeared from their cliff dwellings. Each story has unique details. Different gods, different crops, different technologies. But the underlying structure is disturbingly similar. Rapid growth, resource depletion, environmental stress, social fragmentation, collapse. The cycle repeats because human nature repeats. Because we make the same mistakes wearing different clothes. The reasons for collapse often overlap. Drought appears frequently. Climate change stresses agricultural systems. Cities depend on surplus food. When surplus vanishes, everything unravels. Deforestation is another common thread. Trees hold soil. Their roots stabilize hillsides. Their leaves create rain through evapotranspiration. When forests are cut for farmland or fuel, the environment shifts. Soil erodes. Rain declines. Deserts advance. The Maya deforested to build cities and feed populations. Then drought came, and the cities emptied. The pattern is clear to us looking back, but to people living through it, each tree cut seemed reasonable, each field cleared seemed necessary. Only in aggregate, only over time, does the pattern become visible. By then, it is usually too late. Overextension plays a role. Empires grow until they cannot govern their edges. Communication becomes too slow, authority too distant. Local problems go unsolved. Resentment builds. Akkad controlled territory from the Gulf to the Mediterranean. This required constant military campaigns, constant administration, constant extraction of resources from the provinces. When drought weakened the center, the edges broke away immediately. Rome's empire stretched even farther. The same pattern. Long borders impossible to defend. Barbarians pushing in. Internal divisions. Economic strain. The empire split, then fell. Then became medieval kingdoms that would rise and fall in their own cycles, each wave thinking they had learned from the past, each wave repeating the pattern anyway. What do these cycles teach us? They teach that growth cannot continue forever, that limits exist, that systems based on constant expansion eventually hit boundaries, environmental, economic, or both. They teach that complexity is fragile. Simple societies are resilient. They can absorb shocks, move, adapt. Complex societies are efficient but rigid. They work beautifully under optimal conditions. But they cannot bend when conditions change. They break instead. Akkad was complex, specialized labor, centralized administration, long trade routes. This created wealth and power. It also created vulnerability. One systemic failure cascaded through the whole structure. These historical cycles connect to our present with frightening clarity. Our civilization is more complex than Akkad by orders of magnitude. More specialized, more interconnected, more dependent on systems that must function perfectly. Global supply chains, computer networks, financial systems, climate systems. When one fails, others fail. We call these cascading failures. They are the same pattern that destroyed Akkad, amplified by our increased complexity. We also show the same warning signs: environmental degradation, climate instability, overextension of resources, social fragmentation. We are in the middle of our own cycle. Can we see the pattern in time to change it? Or are we like the Maya, cutting the last tree, arguing it is necessary, unable to see the larger catastrophe until it arrives? Stand between two mirrors in your mind. Behind you, Akkad and all the fallen civilizations. Ahead of you, the unknown future. In one mirror, you see the past, repeating into infinite distance. Each reflection, a collapsed civilization. Each a warning. In the other mirror, you see possible futures. Some show our cities empty like Akkad, some show adaptation, change, survival. The two mirrors face each other. The reflections bounce back and forth, past cycles informing possible futures, future possibilities reinterpreting past patterns. You stand at the center, at the point of choice. The cycle has momentum. It wants to complete, it wants to repeat. But cycles can be broken, patterns can be changed. The question echoing between the mirrors is simple. Will we be another reflection? Or will we be the generation that steps out of the pattern, that sees the cycle and chooses differently? The mirrors wait. The reflections wait. History waits to see if we have learned anything at all. For 4,000 years, Akkadian voices were silent. Their language was dead. Their script was forgotten. People found clay tablets with wedge-shaped marks and could not read them. The tablets sat in ruins, were carried away by travelers, ended up in museums and private collections, mute, their stories locked inside. This was a special kind of death, worse than physical death. Physical death ends one life, but when a language dies with no one to read it, thousands of lives are erased. All the writers, all their thoughts, all their hopes and fears, frozen in clay but inaccessible. Until the key was found. The key came slowly. In the 1800s, scholars began deciphering cuneiform. They started with Persian inscriptions that had parallel texts in known languages. They worked out the sound values. They built vocabularies. They made mistakes and corrected them. Generation after generation of patient work. By the early 1900s, Akkadian could be read again. Suddenly the tablets spoke. Administrative records, mathematical texts, legal codes, poetry, letters. The voices came flooding back. A mother writing to her son who had gone to war, a merchant complaining about bad copper, a scribe copying creation myths. These people were real again. The key had unlocked them. What did the tablets reveal? They revealed Akkad as a bureaucratic state. Everything recorded: rations for workers, grain deliveries, sheep counts. This attention to detail shows organization, control, but also trust in writing. Trust that marks on clay would preserve truth better than memory. Some tablets are contracts. One person sells a field to another. Witnesses sign with their seals. The transaction is permanent, or was supposed to be. The clay lasted. The field returned to sand. Other tablets are school exercises. A student practicing his signs, making mistakes, getting better. We can track individual learning across multiple tablets. We can watch someone become literate 4,000 years ago, but not everything was dry records. Some tablets contain poetry that still moves. The Curse of Akkad is literature, not just history. It has rhythm, imagery, emotional power. Other poems praise gods, celebrate victories, mourn losses. One text is a lullaby, a mother singing to her baby. The words are simple. Sleep, my child. The stars watch over you. The gods protect you. Dream of good things. This lullaby is in a dead language from a vanished city. Yet any mother reading it recognizes her own heart. This is the power of unlocked knowledge. It collapses time. It makes the ancient personal. It proves that humans across all ages love the same way, fear the same way, hope the same way. Unlocking this knowledge connects modern scholars to Akkadian scribes in a direct chain. The scribe pressed his reed into clay. He chose each sign carefully. He baked or dried the tablet. It lasted. A modern scholar in a lab or library holds that tablet, reads those signs, hears that ancient voice. For that moment, the chain completes, writer and reader across 4,000 years. This is perhaps the deepest time travel possible. Not physical, not magical, but real. Two minds touching through language, through the medium of clay and air and light, through the patient work of those who refuse to let the voices stay silent. Imagine yourself as a translator. Before you lies a tablet fresh from excavation. The clay is brown with age. The wedges are clear. You know the language now. You begin to read. At first it seems routine. Barley received, 3,000 units. But then at the end, a personal note. The scribe has added a complaint. My back hurts from sitting. My eyes tire. I wish I were home with my wife. Suddenly he is real. Not a historical abstraction. A man with an aching back, missing home, doing his job. You are the first person to read his words in millennia. You are the one who hears his complaint, who acknowledges his humanity. In this moment, you give him something no one else can. You give him immortality, not the grand kind of kings and monuments, the small kind. The kind where one person knows another person existed, suffered a bit, went home to his wife. This is the hidden knowledge, not facts and dates. The knowledge that we are all brief and all connected. That clay and language can carry this truth forward. That death is not quite final if someone, somewhere, remembers. We have climbed together through 19 chapters, through time and sand, through drought and stars, through art and language, through myth and science. Now we reach the summit. the place where understanding opens into clarity, where all the threads weave together. Akkad was not cursed by gods. Akkad was not destroyed by barbarians alone. Akkad was a human civilization that met the limits of its environment, that faced challenges it could not overcome, that fell not through moral failure, but through forces beyond control. This is not a tragedy. This is simply what happens. Civilizations are temporary. Their endings do not erase their existence. Their falls do not negate their achievements. The people of Akkad lived fully. They woke each morning to face their day. They worked. They loved. They worried about their children. They sang songs. They told jokes. They argued about politics. They made mistakes. They tried to fix them. They built beautiful things. They created ideas that outlasted their city by millennia. Were their lives less meaningful because the city eventually fell? No. A life is not measured by what comes after. It is measured by what happens during. A good day does not become bad because tomorrow brings rain. A loving moment does not lose value because death waits for everyone. Akkad lived. That is enough. Understanding this brings peace, not the peace of answers that explain everything away. The peace of acceptance, of seeing clearly. Akkad fell because climate shifted, because empires overextend, because complex systems are fragile. These are facts. But Akkad also rose because humans dream, because we cooperate, because we build and write and care about legacy. These are also facts. Both truths coexist. The fall does not cancel the rise. The ending does not invalidate the middle. From this summit, we can see the whole arc, see it clearly, see it without needing to judge it, without needing it to be different. It was what it was. It means what we make it mean. What do we make it mean? We make it a mirror. We see ourselves in Akkad's people. We recognize their hopes as our hopes, their fears as our fears, their struggles with meaning and mortality as eternal human questions. We make it a warning. We see what environmental collapse looks like. We see how civilizations blind themselves to danger. We learn or we do not. We make it a connection. 4,000 years disappear. We stand beside an Akkadian mother singing to her child, beside a scribe with an aching back, beside Sargon looking out over his empire, wondering if it will last, beside the last person to leave the city, looking back one final time. We are all together in this, in the brief, beautiful, terrible business of being alive and aware of it. This summit is not an ending, it is a resting place. From here, we will descend back into our own time, back into our own lives. But we carry something back with us, a perspective, a sense of scale, an awareness that our moment is one of many moments, that our struggles are one instance of eternal struggles, that we are part of a pattern larger than ourselves. This does not make our problems less real, but it makes them less lonely. We are not the first to face uncertainty. We will not be the last. Akkad faced its moment. We face ours. The difference is, we have Akkad's story to guide us. We can see the pattern. Can we also see the way to break it? That question remains unanswered. But at least we ask it. At least we try. Rest here at the summit. Look back at where we have been. Look forward at where we must go. The view is clear from this height. The ruins spread below us. The stars spread above. We are between earth and sky, between past and future, between dust and light. This is the human position, always has been, always will be. The peace comes from accepting it, from seeing that Akkad's fate and our fate are connected not by curse, but by the simple fact of being finite beings in an infinite cosmos. We rise, we fall. The stars continue. And somehow, mysteriously, that is enough. That is beautiful. That is the peaceful summit where understanding meets acceptance, meets love for the brief, strange gift of conscious existence. We have walked together through the ruins of Akkad. We have traced its rise under Sargon. We have followed its peak under Naram-Sin. We have understood its fall through drought and climate collapse. We have read its tablets, studied its art, connected its story to all human stories. Now we stand at the end of our journey, ready to leave the ruins behind. But we leave with answers and questions both. Answers that bring clarity, questions that invite continued wonder. This balance is right. Complete certainty would close the door. Remaining mystery keeps it open, keeps us returning, keeps the ancient city alive in our curiosity. The answers we found are solid. Akkad fell because climate shifted dramatically around 2200 BCE. Rainfall declined across the region. Drought lasted generations. Agriculture collapsed. Food security vanished. The population could not sustain itself. People migrated. Cities emptied. This happened not because of divine anger or moral failure. It happened because Earth's climate systems are variable. They shift on timescales of centuries and millennia. Sometimes those shifts are gentle, sometimes catastrophic. Akkad experienced catastrophic change. No amount of prayer or military might could change physics. The rain did not fall. The empire could not survive. This is a soothing answer because it removes moral judgment. Nobody did anything fundamentally wrong. They built what they could with what they knew. When conditions changed beyond their capacity to adapt, they moved on. This is not tragedy, this is nature. Understanding this brings peace. It releases us from the need to find villains. The story has only circumstances and people trying their best. But questions remain. Where exactly was Akkad? Archaeologists still debate. Several sites have been proposed. None confirmed definitively. The capital of the First Empire is still lost beneath sand. How did it feel to be the last person to leave? What did they take with them? What did they leave behind? We can imagine, but we cannot know. What happened to Sargon's descendants? Did any of his bloodline survive the collapse? Are there people alive today who carry his genes? Possibly. Probably. But we have no way to trace that line. These questions have no answers. They float like ghosts. They remind us that history is always incomplete, always fragmentary. We work with what survives. We accept that much is lost forever. The biggest question is the one we asked at the beginning. What will remain of us? When our own civilization reaches its limits, environmental, economic, social, what will future archaeologists find? Will they piece together our story from digital fragments? From plastic layers in the geological record? From the faint radiation signature of our nuclear age? Will they understand us? Will they judge us? Will they see warning signs we missed? Or will they simply note that we too were temporary, that we rose and fell like all the others? This question cannot be answered now. It exists in the future. But Akkad teaches us to take it seriously, to consider legacy, to think about what we leave behind. Connecting these final thoughts to our lives today feels urgent. We stand where Akkad stood at its height, powerful, confident, sure of our permanence. But climate is shifting again, this time by our own hand. Rainfall patterns changing, sea levels rising, storms intensifying. We have advantages Akkad lacked. We understand the climate system. We can measure changes. We can model futures. We have time to adapt. But do we have will? That is the question Akkad cannot answer for us. That is the choice we must make ourselves. Will we be remembered as the civilization that saw danger and changed? Or as another cautionary tale? Another set of ruins for future wanderers to puzzle over? Take one last look at the ruins in your imagination. The broken walls, the buried streets, the tablets waiting to be read. Feel the connection to those ancient people. They were like us. They loved their children. They worked hard. They believed their city would last. They were wrong about permanence, but right about something deeper. Right that building matters, even if what is built fall. Right that love matters, even when lovers die. Right that meaning is not found in duration, but in intention, in effort, in the attempt to create something beautiful. Akkad fell, but Akkad was. And because people lived and worked and dreamed there, it has meaning, permanent meaning in the strange currency of memory. We remember them. In remembering, we honor them. In honoring them, we commit to trying, to building, to loving. Even knowing it is all temporary. Especially knowing it is temporary. Breathe deep. Let the weight of centuries settle around you like a soft blanket. 4,000 years we have traveled together, through sand and stars, through tablets and temples, through drought and dream. If this journey through Akkad's ruins brought you peace, share it with a friend who seeks rest. Leave a quiet word below about which chapter touched you most. Was it the astronomers reading stars? The mother's lullaby preserved in clay? The climate revelation that changed everything? Your words become part of the story. They add another layer to Akkad's meaning. Subscribe to walk with us again through other lost worlds. There are more ruins to explore, more whispers to hear, more mysteries wrapped in moonlight, civilizations that rose and fell, people who loved and feared and hoped just like us. Each one a mirror, each one a lesson, each one a connection to the vast human family scattered across time. But for now, let Akkad fade gently into dream. The sand remembers, the stars remember, and so will you. Tomorrow you will wake in your own world. But tonight you walked ancient streets, you touched clay, pressed by hands long turned to dust. You listened, you understood, you became part of the remembering, and that is everything. And so we leave the ruins of Akkad behind, the broken walls, the buried streets, the temples where gods once listened. We have walked through 4,000 years in a single night. We have seen how pride crumbles, how empires fade, how even the mightiest cities return to dust. But we have also seen beauty, the careful hands that shaped each brick, the scribes who pressed their thoughts into wet clay, the farmers who sang to the earth. Akkad fell, yes, but its story remains, carried on wind, preserved in sand, whispered by those who remember. What will remain of us when we are gone? What stories will the future tell? Will they speak of a civilization that saw warning signs and changed course? Or another that believed it was different? That believed the rules did not apply? Perhaps that is a question for another night. For now, rest. Dream of ancient streets glowing in moonlight. Dream of cylinder seals pressed into clay. Dream of astronomers on ziggurat roofs reading messages in stars. Dream of a mother singing her baby to sleep in words we have only just learned to understand again. The past thanks you for listening. The ruins thank you for walking their silent corridors. The voices thank you for hearing them again after so long in silence. Sweet dreams, wanderer. Tomorrow awaits with its own mysteries, its own challenges, its own brief, beautiful moments that will someday become someone else's ancient history. But tonight, you have honored the past. You have connected across the vast gulf of time. You have proven that memory defeats death, that stories outlast stone, that even cursed ruins can become sacred ground when approached with respect and wonder. Sleep now, the desert wind will cover our footprints. The stars will continue their eternal wheel, and Akkad will wait patiently beneath the sand. Wait for the next wanderer, the next listener, the next person willing to remember. Sweet dream.